This is Gridiron Graduates, a weekly podcast covering all things football. Episode number 25, Pass the Chips, recorded December 9th, 2015.
Hey everybody out there, Bill Rossetti hitting you guys back up on another edition of the Gridiron Graduates. Hope you guys had another great week as always. Joining me, as always, is my good buddy, Mr. Ian Wharton. Ian, what's going on, brother?
Not much, man. Not much. Just glad to be on again, and it's a good time of year for football and, of course, basketball. So, doing pretty well, man.
Good. Yeah, a lot of good stuff going on in basketball. I just got off doing some public announcing for my high school girls team, so that was a lot of fun. And then college basketball going strong. North Carolina playing well. Got the good win over Maryland in the Big Ten ACC Challenge, so that was good to see. And then, of course, Golden State, as we sit here, 23-0. So that's just crazy.
Yeah, really. I don't even know how to describe that. Like, it's absolutely incredible.
I think one simple word comes to mind, and that's unprecedented.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
23-0. I mean, they very well could challenge the Bulls' all-time record.
Yeah, and like I'd seen something, and obviously it's simple math, but I mean they only need 49 more wins to get there.
Yeah, the record is 72, I think, right?
Yeah. So I mean that's pretty attainable. So
it is. Yep. Before we start, though, too, I want to mention one thing. I would like to congratulate you, Ian, on the news you shared a little bit ago that you will be covering the NFL and the draft this offseason for Bleacher Report. So congrats on that, bud.
Yeah, thanks, man. Definitely unexpected. The plan was for me to just kind of step away at the end of the year and do my own thing. But, hey, they came out with a great offer, and wasn't going to say no to that. So.
Hey, there you go, man. So, wish you the best of luck for sure.
Thanks. It'll be very busy next year. Be writing, double as much as I am now. So I'll be writing probably like 6 articles a week. But no, that's a good thing. I mean, I love writing about the draft, and off season's a really fun time.
Absolutely.
For stuff, get a chance to go through film and kind of have a bigger pool to draw from as far as sample sizes. So
and definitely a lot more time to.
Yeah, definitely.
Too.
Yeah, it's much easier to go through a bunch of film on a Sunday than sit around and wait and watch, for 4 hours for one game.
Mm-hmm.
Through 4 hours, I can watch, 2 or 3 games. So.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll be able to continue this, be able to fit this into your busy schedule, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
So, so let's get started. I think we need to talk about the past week in college football and kind of look ahead as the college football. Well, for the most part, the college football regular season is done. Obviously, there's what many consider the greatest rivalry in all of sports coming up this weekend, and of course is Army-Navy. But for the most part, the season is in the books, and our playoff is set. Clemson, no surprise, ends up as the number 1 seed for the playoff as the only unbeaten team at 13-0. Alabama gets the 2 seed, no surprise. Then Michigan State, after defeating Iowa in a bit of a defensive slugfest there, they moved up to number 3, and then Oklahoma gets the 4th spot. You likely figure because of the championship game, that may have slotted Michigan State up to number 3. Though I was watching on ESPN, and of course the way ESPN drags out everything. I mean, I like ESPN, but when they had the selection show on Sunday, they just dragged it on before revealing the 4 teams. They're saying, conspiracy theorists are going to be out there saying that they kept Alabama and Oklahoma. They purposely kept them on opposite sides of the bracket. I mean, if they did, so be it. I'm not saying they did, but, it is what it is. But it does set up a potential Alabama-Oklahoma final.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that they did. I mean, I would have really liked to have seen Alabama have to go through Clemson and Oklahoma, just because I think Michigan State is kind of I don't know, I feel like they're easily like the weak link here. You know, it's just a shame Ohio State didn't beat them. Not only for selfish purposes, but also I think just for like matchup purposes.
Mm-hmm.
I just think Ohio State's a much better team than Michigan State, even though they lost. So it's a little tough to. I just don't. I don't know about you, but if you want to kind of start talking about that matchup a little bit, but do you think Michigan State really has a chance against Bama?
Yeah, I'm a little worried about Michigan State. I think it would have been better for them to stay at 4 and face Clemson. And it was funny too, going back to the selection show there. I think it was Paul Feinbaum was saying, "Oh, Michigan State winning the Big Ten or whatever, they'll be rewarded by moving up to 3 at Oklahoma." How is moving up to number 3 and getting paired with Alabama a reward? Especially.
Yeah, and I guess the argument would be is that, and I do kind of agree with this argument that I don't think Bama's that great this year. I mean, they've only beaten one top 25 team, or team that ended up in the top 25. They don't have a good quarterback. They do have that Calvin Ridley kid. He's a pretty good freshman receiver. But he is still a freshman receiver, even though he's really old for a freshman receiver. And, they obviously have the powerful running game. They have a very good defense. They're just a really tough matchup for teams because they're just so physical. It's basically an NFL team, out there. Not necessarily in terms of they're not dominating everyone necessarily, but just physically they're very difficult to match up with. And they're not, and with Michigan State not being a spread team, which has generally hurt Alabama greatly over the last few years. It's a tough matchup. And I'm kind of with you. I don't know really how you can say that they're lucky to avoid Oklahoma. I mean, I think they're all kind of comparable. I think Oklahoma and Bama and Clemson are all pretty comparable. Is that they're all good teams.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan State still just kind of feels like the oddball there.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to rank these teams, I would have kept Oklahoma at 3. It does feel like Michigan State is the weakest. Obviously, not a weak team, but compared to these 4, and like you said, if it comes down to a power football matchup, Alabama's going to dominate in that sense. So I really feel that Alabama should win this game, and I think they're saying when the matchups came out, Alabama was a pretty big favorite, for this being a playoff game. What did I see? Something like 9 or something, 7, 8, 9 point favorite or something like that.
Yeah,
for Alabama.
I think it started out at 9,
which is crazy for a playoff semifinal even in college.
Yeah.
So wow.
Though it's kind of weird in that and bowl season is more like this than any sport I feel like I can remember. When you've got so much time.
Yes.
And you start the draft or you start the bowl season and you just kind of like we're talking how we're both agreeing that we feel like Michigan State as an underdog might be a considerable underdog. But then when we get closer to the game, I'm interested to see. I wonder if these feelings start changing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like it gets like that, and I felt this way with Ohio State, Florida. That was really the game where that comes to life for me personally as a fan. When Ohio State with Troy Smith, Ted Ginn, Santonio Holmes, just a fantastic team, and they came off that thrilling Michigan victory. They were hyped up for so long. Troy Smith won the Heisman. He got fat, and the team I don't think were razor sharp with their focus because they were a great team. And honestly, I believe that. I think Ohio State that year was a better team. But Florida had magic too. And Florida had a great coach in Urban Meyer. And that team was razor sharp with their energy off the bat, their ability to set up a game plan. But the same thing was kind of like I'm talking about in general. at first everyone thought Ohio State would blow out Florida because they were that good of a team. But as the game got closer, you just kind of felt like the tide turned. And I don't know if that was just me as a fan starting to get worried and paranoid about it. But I don't know. I feel like every year we get close to these games, and then it's like, oh, you know what? I think this might be a closer game than what I thought. It's just kind of weird. I don't know. Have you experienced that feeling? I mean, I don't know. As a younger person, I feel like I used to notice that almost every year, and maybe Bama and Notre Dame was like one of the few examples where I never felt that way.
Yeah.
I always felt like Bama was going to destroy them, and obviously they did.
Yep.
I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting dynamic, and I don't know if that's because of time or what.
Yeah. Admittedly, as a younger fan, I just kind of followed the games. I'm not as into it analytically as I am now, but you bring up a great point. If this was a game being played this Saturday between Alabama and Michigan State, then yeah, we obviously feel Alabama's going to be the favorite. But the fact is, Michigan State is going to have 3+ weeks to prepare for this game. This game isn't going to be played for what, 3 weeks this coming Friday. So that's a lot of time.
So much time.
Mark D'Antonio and company to devise or come up with some kind of game plan to stop Alabama. Maybe it was kind of the same way with Ohio State last year too. Like a lot of people felt, Alabama as the top seed could possibly cruise to a title, but perhaps Ohio State came up with something up their sleeve in those, say, 3.5 weeks between the time the bowl game was announced to the time the game was played. So, time is everything in football. That's why we see, like in the NFL and even in college football, like all these weird things happening in week 1 because there's so much time between when the game is set and when the game is actually played. Like you look in the NFL, these schedules are announced in April, so you essentially have 5 months to prepare for your week 1 opponent. Now, obviously, you're not fully thinking about that opponent right away, but at least you have all that time in between instead of, as you get into the season, you only have 1 week to prepare for these teams. So you never know. And obviously the storylines are already being created as well, as far as Mark D'Antonio facing his former assistant or his former protege Nick Saban. So that's going to be interesting to watch because it's definitely a good coaching matchup too between Saban and D'Antonio. So definitely it feels like it's the weaker of the two games, but it's still going to be an interesting game nonetheless.
Yeah, obviously well coached Michigan State, and the one really super interesting part, and you got to consider, is that Connor Cook, the quarterback for Michigan State, he's had some injury issues, and this 3 weeks off, 4 weeks, about 3-4 weeks off or so, that could really do him some good. And I don't know. I mean, I watched that Iowa game, and I don't know how much his body was affecting his level of play. But he, as far as a draft prospect, that's one conversation. And I think that's a different conversation. I think that when you're looking at these games, it's not necessarily about draft prospects. I think, one thing that I try to do is I'm trying to appreciate players as college players too, and sometimes, especially as people that look at the draft 12 months of the year, basically, it can be easy to only look at that NFL scope. And there can be great college players, and it's okay that they are flawed, and it's okay that they need a very specific way to succeed, and that's okay. Now, obviously, when you're looking toward the NFL, there may be a different side, maybe a different story, maybe a different side of the story that you're looking for. But kind of what I'm trying to look at here is saying, okay, can Connor Cook be healthy, and is he going to be able to maximize his playmakers from the pocket, because that's something that he does very well. He allows his playmakers to go make plays. If there's a weak part of that Alabama secondary or Alabama defense, it's definitely the secondary. And I think Cook has a wonderful variety of playmakers between Josiah Price, the tight end. Aaron Burbidge is a fantastic wide receiver. Kings, he's another playmaker that it's really stood out to me while I'm charting Connor Cook currently. But yeah, I mean, I don't expect it to be a super close game, but like we talked about, I mean, I hope it is. I'll say that. I really hope it is. If I'm going to predict it, I do think Bama probably pulls away at the end. I just think it's going to be hard to deal with that physicality of Bama. But I mean, I guess I wouldn't be surprised either way. I mean, I was shocked, absolutely shocked. Ohio State couldn't beat Michigan State. So, they're obviously a very good team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll talk about Ohio State in a little bit because we'll get to their bowl in a bit. But let's switch. And, while we're making predictions, I think I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I do think Alabama wins this game and gets to the final. But let's flip over to the other semifinal, the Orange Bowl, pitting number 1 Clemson against Oklahoma, which includes Heisman finalist Deshaun Watson. And certainly there seemed to be a little bit of controversy around the reveal of the Heisman finalists. But, it's hard to argue the three that are on there between Watson, McCaffrey, and as I'm drawing a complete blank on the third person. I'm sorry to all the listeners.
Oh, it's Watson, Henry, and McCaffrey?
Derrick Henry, yes.
Yeah,
thank you. So both sides, both semifinals have a Heisman finalist. But,
yep.
Yeah, Clemson, Oklahoma is a very interesting matchup to me. I think these are two talented offenses. I think the issue is I haven't really seen much as far as the injury news for Mayfield.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything on him, but I mean, I'm assuming that he's going to play. And
yeah.
I mean,
again, we talk about the time effect.
Much
time between
got about a month to heal up.
So.
Yeah, he's a fun player to watch, by the way. He's like one of those guys like I was kind of talking about. Like, I don't really know about his NFL prospects, but I don't really care because he's really fun to watch.
Yeah, and I mean at this point, like we'll talk NFL draft, obviously, in the next couple months. But right now, it's not focusing on the draft. We're talking about these players on the college field, and Mayfield has really been one of the key reasons why Oklahoma is in the position that they are in. Now, I know a lot of people are kind of picking at the fact that Oklahoma lost to Texas as a potential reason as to why maybe they shouldn't be in the playoff. But if you're gonna fault Oklahoma for their one loss, these people have to realize that, yeah, Oklahoma lost to Texas, but that is also their only loss. And in the end, only one team finished the season undefeated. So you still have to match up Oklahoma against all the other one-loss teams. And the teams they've beaten trounce some of the other schools and who they've beaten. So and just the way they've been playing over the last couple of weeks. They beat Oklahoma State and Baylor and whatnot. They've shown they deserve to be here. There's no question. Because the Big 12 was shut out last year and they didn't have a title game, but I think the issue with that too was that Baylor and TCU split the Big 12 title. Baylor, quote unquote, had the head-to-head over TCU, but the Big 12 recognized them as co-champions, so it was a little hard to decipher between the two of them. Oklahoma this year won it outright, and just the way they've been playing, because who else were you really going to put at that point?
Yeah, and I think Ohio State was probably the team that was first one out. But again, I mean, like I've said before, and I'll continue to say, they had their chance. All they had to do was beat Michigan State, and I'm perfectly fine with Oklahoma being in. They're playing great football right now. They're a fun team on both sides of the ball. They've got a lot of talent. They just play like that physical style, and they complement it with a fun quarterback as well. So Sterling Shepard, a beast of a receiver too. But I think that this is going to be a really great matchup as far as if you like fireworks. And again, that's what you're expecting, so that means it's probably going to be a defensive game, of course, because that just seems to be,
always
again.
works, yep.
Yep, that's how football happens, but which will be beautiful. I enjoyed the Big Ten championship game. I thought, even though it was a little ugly, I thought it was a good game, and it was great defense, and that's really kind of refreshing to see. I think this will be.
Defense still makes good football.
It does, and that might be how this game is. Which of course means Michigan State and Bama will be a barn burner. But no, I'm with you here, and especially with the whole Oklahoma and Texas loss. One thing I don't like about college football. I do, you can make the argument and say, well, a team grows since that loss, and I think you're 100% right. I just don't know if I like punishing a team because they lost late, as opposed to losing early in the season. A loss is still a loss, and I'm okay with that loss to Texas. I'm perfectly fine with that. But just in general, the timing of your loss really does mean so much, and that it's a little unfortunate. I'm not going to lie, and it's not really directed to one team. It's just kind of something we've been able to notice the last couple of years. Ohio State benefited from it in 2014. Obviously, the early loss to Virginia Tech. Same for Michigan State. So they suffered an earlier loss in the season, and they were able to recover from it. So it's just kind of interesting. It's really tough, man. I really wish and I said this when they first announced the 4-team playoff. I really wish it was a 6 or 8-team playoff, even a 6-team playoff where like the first 2 seeds get the bye week, almost like the NFL's conference playoffs. I almost wish it was something like that, where the first 2 teams get a bye week, and then you've got the latter 2 teams facing off. And I think that'd just be more fun, because I do think that there's 6 teams that deserve to probably fight for this title.
Yep.
8 teams, I understand if someone thinks that that's too many. I do. I do understand that. But 6 just feels right. I do wish we could see that.
And the thing too is like, the whole reason they only stuck with 4 was because they wanted to preserve the bowl season, and they wanted to preserve the feel of like every week in the regular season as a playoff. Well, even if you go to 6 and 8, you're still kind of doing that.
Yeah.
Because there's still even at 8 teams. That's not a whole lot of room, and instead of nitpicking between Oklahoma and Iowa, we'd be nitpicking between, say, Notre Dame and Florida State. So, there's nitpicking no matter how many teams you put in a field. With college basketball, we sit here and nitpick over teams that were in the first 4. We nitpick over teams that were essentially numbers 67 and 68 into the field versus 69 and 70. There's going to be controversy no matter what. But again, even if you increase the field a little bit, it still preserves the regular season a little bit. And let's be honest, the bowl system is kind of broken.
Yeah.
We have 3 teams at 5 and 7 that got invites to a bowl because we didn't have enough teams that actually became bowl eligible the old-fashioned way to fill out the bowl schedule. We'll discuss this a little bit next week when we bring in Jeff Riston. Little teaser for you listeners, by the way. One of the bowl games, I don't know if you noticed, has 2 conference teams playing each other.
I did notice that.
It was thanks to a kind of a retweet of something Brett McMurphy said. I think it was Ryan Bozer who said something kind of quoting the tweet, and it mentioned about that bowl. So I looked back at the bowl schedule, and I'm like, wait a minute. Oh my God, this is 2 conference teams. Nevada and Colorado State are both from the Mountain West.
It's really weird. I don't know if that's ever happened. maybe it has, especially with so many bowl games here in the last.
I actually, yeah, it was fun. I didn't mean to cut you off
No,
there.
no, go ahead.
But yeah, I did actually tweet about that. I said, "When's the last time this happened?" And someone like quickly responded to me within like 15 seconds, saying, "Oh, 1979, Nebraska against Oklahoma."
Oh, okay. So, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it must have been going around as the.
Probably, yeah. That's what I kind of figured. Like, he must have caught it somewhere.
Yeah.
He knew it's because I mean,
it's fascinating.
It is interesting. Like, it's like, wow, you very rarely see conference teams go up against each other. And it was funny. Like, they were, and I'm sorry we're getting off track of the playoff a little bit.
No, go ahead.
It was funny. They're saying something like, "Oh, the Mountain West commissioner's like, upset that this had to happen." But well, he's not. I don't think he's going to be too upset when he's raking in the money for the fact that he has two teams playing in that bowl game. I mean, they're both going bowling no matter what.
Right.
I mean, whether they're playing each other or not, they were going to be in some bowl in some fashion. Because again, we didn't even reach the number of bowl eligible teams we needed to fill all the bowls. So all the teams that were bowl eligible were guaranteed a spot. It's not like any team was going to get left out. So, the fact that they're playing each other, so be it.
It's just, it's just so unique, and I don't think it's ideal because I like the fun matchups that you don't get to see on a regular basis. You don't get to see teams like, I think Cal and Air Force is the game. Because I want to watch that for Jared Goff. I like those type of games just because they're so unique.
Mm-hmm.
But still, hey, it's good for those teams. It's still a bowl game. It's still going to be a good opportunity for fans of those teams, and then maybe get a little extra bragging rights as well in there. Just very unique, and like you had mentioned a couple weeks ago with like the possibility of so many 5 and 7 teams. That's kind of what happens now. I mean, if you've got so many bowl games. And again, I'm not going to complain about, more football.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm going to complain about. But I do think at some point you have to question, do we really want the possibility of conference teams playing each other in these type of scenarios? Or, do we need to possibly prevent that from happening? And again, I don't really care. I mean, I'm not going to complain too much. But it is something for them to consider because I could see bowls not wanting that to happen.
I mean, let's face it. I'm kind of looking at some of the bowl games now. I'm sure people are still going to sit there and watch San Jose State against Georgia State in the Cure Bowl.
Right.
Just as an example. Nothing against those schools. I'm just saying, people are still going to watch that game even though they're not, big name teams. But, just the fact that it's a bowl game and it's, some kind of football, people are still going to watch it.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Especially this time of year in December. If you're not a basketball fan, and first of all, I don't know who you are if you don't like basketball. Some form of basketball at least. But, in all seriousness, if you don't like basketball for whatever reason, it's not like there's Saturdays to really look forward to because the way the football schedule works for these bowl games is, and as I'm looking at the schedule right now, I mean, you've got games basically every day or every other day here through December and then into January. So, that's kind of nice if you just settle down for the evening and you just want to have something on in the background, and I'm telling you, the games that you don't expect to be great are going to be great.
Yep.
And I'm already starting to pick them out as I look through the schedule. And like I said, and like you mentioned, we'll talk more about this with Jeff Risden next week. But obviously, we'll talk with him a lot more since he'll be our guest. But just a couple games on here look really fascinating. Like just a couple quick examples here: Western Kentucky versus South Florida. That's going to be a really fun game because they're two completely different style teams. What else here? LSU versus Texas Tech. Again, two fun coaches, two very different styles. So no, and it's a great time of year. And if you're a football lover, don't be afraid to put on the Georgia Southern game or some different teams that you may have never seen before, because you may be surprised. I mean, Georgia Southern was a team Jarek McKinnon of the Vikings played for. So you never know what talent is on these teams unless if you watch them, and sometimes you end up finding a stud.
And I got to mention, like you brought up about college basketball. For some people, might take a back seat, and it does, because the problem with college basketball is that a lot of people don't get into it until the conference schedule starts. Like, it really doesn't pick up until early January. For some people, they don't even start watching until maybe February, because there's so many blah games early in the schedule. Like, they've tried to pick up a little bit on that, with the Champions Classic and, some of these top teams scheduling top games against each other. But for the most part, it's just a lot of, we'll pay you to come here to get your butts kicked. Now, obviously, there are some games where you'll see these schools take the paycheck and the win. You look at the first day of the season, Western Illinois went to Wisconsin and beat the Badgers, a team that played in the national championship game last year. But for the most part, college basketball for the casual fan doesn't pick up until conference games get going in late December or early January. So these bowl games do kind of help fill in that gap between the start of the college season, or start of the college basketball season, to, like I said, the middle of the season as we kind of start the stretch run toward the NCAA tournament. Yeah, so let's get back to some of these top games here. Real quick, back on the semifinal we're talking about. I do find it interesting, though, that Oklahoma opened as the favorite against Clemson. And I could certainly see Oklahoma springing the upset here. I could certainly see it being an Alabama-Oklahoma final. But, Clemson will be ready to play. And, again, with so much time to prepare, anything can happen. And they could be the top two teams playing each other in the first round. I'm really excited to see the two quarterbacks go at it with Deshaun Watson and Blake Mayfield.
Yeah, it goes back to, and I think you probably remember this conversation we had about the Cowboys and the Panthers, where the Cowboys somehow were the favorites entering that Thanksgiving game, and it's just Vegas begging the public.
Oh, I'll bet Vegas made a killing that day.
Yep, they're begging the public who doesn't pay attention to betting lines, who doesn't pay attention, and they're underestimating a team just because they're not familiar with them. That's exactly what this is. This is a name brand, and obviously I don't think this is truly comparable in terms of talent difference, because I think these two teams are much closer than Dallas and Carolina. But clearly Oklahoma's a household name. They know who Bob Stoops is, and they're very comfortable with that pedigree that he has, as opposed to Clemson. Clemson doesn't have the superstar head coach. Now, to football fans that watch on a weekly basis, we know Dabo Swinney. We know who that is. We know who Deshaun Watson is. We know guys like that. But, I mean, my parents wouldn't know who that is. So if my parents were interested in, betting this football game, if I told them the names of the two teams, they're going to say Oklahoma. And that's who they're targeting. And that's who the people they make a ton of money off of. That's kind of what this feels like. I mean, if I'm picking just in terms of who's a better team and who I think will win, I mean, if I have to pick a favorite, I think I'm going to go with Clemson. And I'm a little surprised. I'm with you. I'm a little surprised that Oklahoma's the favorite here.
And again, as the weeks go by, potentially that line will shift. But in the coming weeks, and I'm sure we'll talk to Jeff, get his quick thoughts on this game too. So it'll be really interesting though to see, how the perception of these games changes as we get closer to New Year's Eve. let's talk about some of the other New Year's Six bowl games. And for those listening, we may not get too much, if any, NFL talk this week. I apologize if you're looking at that, but I figure, with the bowl games being announced, we'll focus on them a little bit. Give the college guys their due time here, and certainly there's still plenty of time to discuss the NFL as we get closer to the end of the regular season, the start of the playoffs. But yeah, I definitely want to talk about some of these bowl games. I do got to ask you though, you're probably pretty happy that your two teams, Ohio State and Houston, were not matched up against each other in the New Year's Six. That was probably a bit of a relief for you.
Yeah, a little bit. I growing up, obviously Ohio State and Notre Dame have played a few times, and Ohio State whooped them a couple times. So I'm looking, I don't have anything against Notre Dame, but I'm looking forward to beating them pretty good again. As I trash talk to no one here.
I have a few buddies that are Notre Dame fans, so if you want to trash talk them, go ahead.
Well, if they're on Twitter, we may have to do a friendly avatar bet or something. But
something I'm glad we did not do for the Eagles-Dolphins game.
So it should be a good game. I think Notre Dame's a really good team. We're gonna hopefully see some Joey Bosa against Ronnie Stanley. So that's gonna be an exciting matchup. And I think Ohio State has the upper hand depending on what type of quarterback play shows up for Ohio State. JT Barrett's got to be playing well. But it should be a fun game. They're two good teams, two well coached teams. Obviously Notre Dame's had a great season as well. A couple tough losses, but they've had a really good season nonetheless. So should be a good one. And Houston plays Florida State. That's going to be a really, really intriguing matchup. I think Florida State. Obviously, they've got the size difference. They've got the experience difference. That may be ultimately what propels them to a win, but I'm definitely pulling for Houston, of course. Houston's just a fun team, and people are going to figure out, Greg Ward is a very, 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 very exciting player to watch, and especially in Tom Herman's system. Mostly a running quarterback, but he's a good throwing player as well. Obviously, again, go back to college football player. He's a really fun guy, and so I'm really excited to watch both of those teams.
Yeah, and I had a funny feeling they would pair Ohio State against Notre Dame just by looking at, which teams were expected to get into the bowls. You only had a select few at-large spots because, if you know how the bowl system worked this year with the New Year's Six and how the teams are selected, you really only had those two games that actually got to kind of pick their teams and pick the matchups. The other ones were, for the most part, set. With the Sugar Bowl, you had, it's normally the SEC champ versus the Big 12 champ. Well, both of those teams are in the playoff, so you take replacement picks for those spots, and you typically keep it in conference. Hence the Oklahoma State versus Ole Miss game, which, and we'll talk about in a second. I was a little surprised to see Oklahoma State get the nod, but I can understand, I guess, the head-to-head over TCU and, maybe other factors. Ole Miss wasn't a surprise to me that they got the Sugar Bowl nod. And then the Rose Bowl, of course, they give Iowa the nod to replace Michigan State, and, of course, Stanford is Pac-12 champs. So you only had the four, and then Houston got the auto bid as the Group of Five champ, so you really only had three teams that were selected based on the rankings, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Florida State, and those two games to, four teams to match up in two games. So it was just a matter of, where do you put them? You're obviously not going to pair Notre Dame and Florida State against each other, being in the same conference. You try to avoid that. And I'm sure that they probably figured Ohio State and Notre Dame, two well-known schools, two great teams this year, would be a great ratings draw, great game to watch. So to me, it was kind of a no-brainer that they put those two against each other, which kind of left Houston and Florida State to go against each other in the Peach Bowl, which, as you mentioned, it's not a bad matchup. These are still two pretty good teams, and it'll still be a fun game to watch. The one thing I was always curious about, though, too, and even way before the season started when we saw the bowl schedule, the Fiesta Bowl kicks off at 1:00 Eastern Time. This is a game in Arizona, and it's kicking off at 1:00 Eastern Time. I just found that really fascinating.
Yeah, it's a schedule conducive to college football fans. I'm going to obviously take off New Year's Eve. I've only got New Year's Day off. I'm going to take off New Year's Eve so I can watch football as well. But yeah, it's, for the players, and again, that's something to consider. It's something to consider when you're watching these games, and we saw it with Minnesota and San Francisco week 1. Time differences, your body's not used to it. Both Ohio State and Notre Dame are not used to playing at 11 a.m. It's not too different, but it may be different enough. You know what I mean? Like again, you haven't played in a month. You're preparing for an opponent that you've never seen or never played against in the 4 years, 5 years that you've been on campus. Coaching staffs aren't familiar with each other, so it's not a common opponent. And it's a big piece of the pie. And it's, again, have you been preparing for the last month, or have you been sitting around and not caring about this game? Because unfortunately, that does happen in some of these games where a team had title aspirations, they didn't make it, and quite frankly, you can tell that's just, they don't care. I hope that doesn't happen, though, because that really robs us all of good football.
I think the Boise State TCU game from a couple years ago is a great example of that. Because both of these teams are not just, I guess, kind of in the title hunt, but I think it was more so that they just wanted to face some of the big boy schools. So when they were paired against each other in the Fiesta Bowl, I was like, well, why? We wanted a shot at the big boys, and you're not giving it to us, so why should we care? And of course, this was before TCU made the jump to the Big 12. I think they were still in the Mountain West at the time, and Boise State was in the WAC. So it was you had the two BCS crashers, but it kind of sucked that they put them against each other. So yeah, you hope it doesn't happen. You hope the kids still go out and say that, well, we're still in a great bowl game, and we're facing a real good team. We'd love to beat them. So
absolutely, and then a lot of these guys, especially at the bigger schools that have the chance at those opportunities, and sometimes they miss. Looking at Notre Dame, Stanford, Ohio State, Oklahoma State, a lot of these kids have potential NFL aspirations. So, look, this might not be the team goal that you have, but you still need to have pride. You need to have the self-awareness to put that good tape out there, to play hard for your teammates. Even if you're not an NFL prospect, play hard for your teammates. You've got a lot of fans traveling a lot of miles, spending a lot of money to go a long ways away for some of these games. And I'm not saying that this will happen, but again, sometimes unfortunately, you do see it happen. Yeah, just take pride in your performance. It's just like every day in life, we may not do glorious jobs in the real world, but you still have to take pride in that. And sometimes you don't feel like working hard. Sometimes you don't, want to be where you're at working, but you have to have a good reflection on yourself every day. You don't want that out there for everyone to see where you're slacking off, or it doesn't seem like you care, because that's just, personal pride wise, that's not something that you want.
Yeah, especially with a lot of eyeballs.
Oh yeah. A lot of attention paid that day, and a lot of opinions are formed, especially for the 2016 season.
Yes.
For your underclassmen.
That is true. Yep.
This is, and I will say, I think it's overreaction season one way or the other sometimes as well. You sometimes got to take a little bit grain of salt on what you see in bowl games from individuals, because you'll see, again, they've had a month to prepare, so some teams come out and play extremely well, and it's just, it's not necessarily who they are.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people that will proclaim one conference better than another just because they had a better bowl season. Like, oh, the ACC was always better than the Pac-12. They proved it because they won 5 bowl games and the Pac-12 only won 3. Well, no, you can't say that. It's such a small sample size.
Right.
The SEC East stinks because they went 2-6 in bowl games. So be it. Maybe they just had bad matchups, or something happened that just didn't go their way. You can't sit there and use one game as the be all end all. That's why we warn people after week 1: don't make harsh judgments. Excuse me, after just one game. You gotta let things kind of develop. Now, obviously, after the bowl game, you're done, but still, you got to take that plus everything, and then spring practices and kind of develop from there.
Yep.
And let the opinions form from there.
Interested to see if maybe I can find another Paxton Lynch this year. And I watched a lot of Lynch from the middle of last year on, but his bowl game was really one of his breakout performances, and he had some negative plays in there as well. But yeah, I mean, I was one of the first guys on the Lynch train. Now the hype has gotten extremely high on him, and a little maybe too rich for me at the current price. But it sometimes just goes both ways. Sometimes you do find a stud.
Yeah, the Paxton Lynch train has really taken off lately. I've seen him, really skyrocketing a little bit as far as some rankings and some mock drafts go.
I believe Matt Miller had him number 1 overall.
Oh boy!
In the latest mock draft, and he didn't say that's what he would do. That's saying that what he thinks could happen.
And that would just be Cleveland being Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, I like the guy. I wouldn't say it's a bad pick.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be my pick, but I would understand the pick.
If Jared Goff's there, I'd go with him. But.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm with you. But I do get the attraction to Lynch. Yeah. He's just a different player than Goff is.
It's understandable just because they need a quarterback desperately.
Yeah, and some people are going to be drawn more to the bigger quarterback, the ideal frame, that type of stuff. And I mean, I'm not going to blame them for that. I prefer more of the mental side of the things, and that's why I preferred guys like Teddy Bridgewater out of college. I like more accuracy over high variance types, and you can't really predict exactly how a guy's going to develop too. So part of it is that higher floor. If I'm building a franchise, to me is attractive. Mm-hmm. So it's just it's everything. It's a lot to consider. There's 1,000,001 factors.
Yeah. And I was just looking up quick Memphis where their bowl game was because I wasn't sure off the top of my head, but they are in the Birmingham Bowl against Auburn. So, and of course Auburn was my pick to go to the national championship game this year. So, what a plummet from potential national title game to playing in the Birmingham Bowl.
Yeah, well,
I mean, not a terrible bowl, but
no, one of those things that it's hard to project. And I mean, a lot of people were high on Auburn. I was high on Auburn. I thought that Jeremy Johnson might have been a potential stud, and clearly not the case.
Yeah, he fell apart very quickly. That Jacksonville State game was very telling, it turns out.
Yep, that's all you needed to know.
They won the game, but it was still very ugly.
Yep, basically told you all you needed to know about him. He was immediately no longer a draft prospect. I think you'll have that sometimes, though.
Yeah, you will. I think this is kind of turning to just us discussing the bowls as far as college, the games themselves, and next week we can do a draft focus, so that it works out pretty nice.
Yeah, we'll get Jeff's thoughts, especially on the New Year's Six.
Yeah.
Because he's going to have a little bit of a different perspective, and he has a great perspective. Really looking forward to Jeff joining us next week. But absolutely, we'll get his take on draft and maybe the NFL playoffs as those come as well. Because again, Jeff Jeff does a lot of work, man. He does a great job covering not only the NFL but the NFL draft and also the college football as well. So
Yep.
he's a great guest. Really excited that you were able to get him on, and I know that you're working on a couple other guys that will be very good additions to the podcast as well.
Yeah, a little teaser there. I won't spoil who I'm working on, but I've got some good guys that I've potentially got in the works here. So hopefully it works out and we can get some of these guys on. But yeah, let's kind of talk the remaining New Year's Six.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no. Since we're going to discuss some of these other bowls, I want to mention one of the bowls that one of the non-New Year's Six bowl games that I'm pretty intrigued by. I'm actually looking forward to the Alamo Bowl. I think Oregon TCU, to me, is a very fun match, or going to be a very fun matchup to watch on January 2nd. Two real good offenses going at it. Again, it could be one of those that defense runs the show, as we talked about earlier, but to me, when I looked at the bowl schedule and I was scrolling through, that game really caught my eye as one that I'm definitely looking forward to watching.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I feel like that one's definitely going to be a heavy offense game, just because, those two teams really lack talent on defense. And plus you've got two high-octane systems, two high-octane quarterbacks, Trevon Boykin, Vernon Adams, who apparently has been playing great football in the last 2 months or so, and people even talked about him as a possible draftable quarterback, which seems crazy to me, but, based on what he was in the first month or so of the season. But, I haven't really seen Oregon lately. They don't have that many prospects that I've needed to watch. So, yeah, no, I think that's a really good matchup that should be fun and entertaining for everyone involved.
And then I'll definitely quickly mention Penn State, of course. You threw in your Ohio State, so I'll throw in Penn State a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
They still got a good bowl. Obviously it was a down season for Penn State, but not gonna argue over where they were selected. The Tax Slayer Bowl is still a pretty decent bowl. And if you figured they were probably going to fall there or the Music City Bowl, and from hearing reports, the Tax Slayer was leaning toward them because you figure with how the Big Ten was kind of tiered, and you were expecting 3 teams in the New Year's Six, so things kind of fell into place. But I'll take a Tax Slayer Bowl matchup against Georgia. It's not Georgia's not overly great this year.
Yeah,
I know Penn State hasn't really beaten anybody good, but Georgia's a beatable opponent.
Mm-hmm. They're a beatable team, but they're also a good enough team where if you win the game, that's a notable win.
Yeah.
That's something that you can actually be proud of. But you're right though. I'm kind of with you though. I feel like that's not a game that that they can enter and say we have no chance at this game. Like I don't feel that way. I feel like that's actually a game that you're circling on the calendar and saying, hey, we can definitely win this game. We just have to play. We have to play a good game. But hey, that's bowl season.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I agree. I'm looking forward to seeing Hackenberg one more time before he bolts to the NFL. This will be a good test for him as well, and maybe a good stage for him to have a great game and surprise people.
Just kind of scrolling through some of the other games. UNC Baylor in the Russell Athletic Bowl could be a pretty good one. Pitt and Navy, pretty good game. Pitt's a team I was a little surprised at because I thought they were going to get a better bowl than the Military Bowl. I thought Pittsburgh was going to get a Tier 1 bowl, being that they seem to be one of the better ACC teams. But, a matchup with Navy isn't bad. Nebraska at 5-7 lands in the Foster Farms Bowl. And let me just check. The other 5-7 teams, I just passed Minnesota. They're in the Quick Lane Bowl against Central Michigan. Well, that's because the Quick Lane was like the bottom of the barrel bowls for the Big Ten.
It's just so weird to even hear you say 5-7. That's so hard.
It is. I know.
What a mess.
And then San Jose State, as we mentioned earlier, against Georgia State in the Auto Nation Cure Bowl. I love the day. I gotta ask you too about. Do you know what Battle Frog is?
I don't. Never heard of it.
I know. When I saw the news that Battle Frog is the title sponsor now for the Fiesta Bowl, I'm thinking, what is Battle Frog?
Man, I don't know. Like, is it like an app or something? Or?
Let's. For those listening, I am at the moment going to look. I am Googling as we speak what Battle Frog is. Battle Frog Race Series. Okay. I'm looking at from NBC Sports, their college football talk. Maybe they talk about what Battle Frog is. Described in a press release, and I'm reading this from the article. Described in a press release as, quote, the nation's leading outdoor fitness event and obstacle race organizer, unquote.
Interesting.
Okay, then.
Well, I mean, their sponsorship of the game did its job. Got you to search them.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. That's a great point. I have to find out who they are. The article brings up a neat point, though. It mentions it's only a 1-year deal that Battle Frog is a title sponsor for this game.
Interesting.
So we'll see if they're the title sponsor next year when the Fiesta Bowl is actually one of the playoff games for next season.
Maybe their thought is that maybe they'll cut down some of these bowl games. May have to happen with all these 5 and 7 teams.
Yeah, I mean, it was. We talked before how it was going to be interesting what they were going to do with these 5 and 7 teams, how they were going to sort them out. It was no surprise that they simply went with the best APR teams. Now to that point, San Jose State actually got a little bit of a gift from Missouri, because Missouri actually declined to be a bowl team at 5 and 7, which obviously is their right. They said we don't want to be a bowl team at 5 and 7 essentially. So
sure,
that's to their credit. So because of that, San Jose State moved in as essentially the last team to get a bowl bid. So, Merry Christmas, San Jose State, I guess, from your friends in Missouri.
Yeah, no, especially with everything that's going on there, that's an interesting decision. But.
Yeah, and I guess too, like the whole coaching search. And I think the coaching search is over. And I think Missouri found the coach.
Yeah, they did. They named. I think they named just an assistant as their head coach.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, they promoted someone from within.
Yeah, so.
That's right.
But yeah, that coaching search too is another interesting topic. That there's been a lot of coaching changes, NFL and college, and so it's an interesting opportunity, and it'll be interesting to see and I'm sure we'll touch on this closer to the end of the season for the NFL. Coaching candidates across the NFL, there's a lot of choices to be made.
Mm-hmm.
You got a lot of good candidates, and should be interesting to see exactly where teams decide to go.
Yeah, Adam Gase has to be at the top of that list.
Yeah, I think he will be.
I think, or at least one of the top guys. And then in the college ranks, it seems like Brian Kelly, the rumors are floating around that he's going to get another look. He's gotten a look by the NFL before, and with the potential NFL spots opening up, Kelly seems like he may be the top guy, the top college guy that may get to look this season. Him, and then maybe the NFL will continue to try to lure Kevin Sumlin out of Texas A&M. So we'll see. It's gonna be fun to watch, and there's certainly some teams that we can almost assume will be without a head coach after the regular season. Number one being Cleveland. San Francisco is a possibility. And a couple other teams. So it'll be fun.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
looking
for
forward
sure.
to it.
For sure. The NFL never lets you sleep, and yeah, they've mastered the PR machine as far as staying relevant in the news, whether for good or bad. Uh, um, you can't slam them for that. They don't do everything right, but one thing they do right is they stay in the news quite well.
Boy, do they ever. They certainly have us hook, line, and sinker. But we love it. We can't get away from it. We can't get enough of it.
Nope.
Though I think that is enough for tonight, though. I think we got another solid hour and definitely talked a lot of bowls. And again, we'll continue this bowl discussion next week with Jeff Risden. And again, I think next week is going to... Tonight turned into just kind of a little bit of a bowl preview. Obviously, we didn't touch on every game, but, I'm sure even you guys don't want to sit here and listen to us babble about 40 games. I think, a handful of games as far as bowl season is sufficient. I think we covered the New Year's Six pretty well, and then a couple other games. So that was good, and that was just kind of the teams previewing them. Next week's going to be more of a draft focus, I think, and maybe a little analysis too of the teams with Jeff Risden. So definitely looking forward to that next week. So hopefully you guys tune into that. And as always, thanks for listening. Any final words for our friends, Ian?
Thanks for listening as always. And if you have questions or topics that you want to hear us talk about, just feel free to send them via Twitter.
Absolutely. So enjoy Army-Navy this weekend. One of the great college games. And then, of course, week 14 of the NFL season. We're hitting the home stretch there as well. We're into the quarter pole. We'll see if Carolina can get to 13-0. We'll see if the Patriots bounce back, and we'll see if the Browns continue to brown.
Hopefully not, for their sake.
And for their fans' sake.
Yeah. Although, I guess long term, it's probably the best for them.
That's right. Short-term misery for potential long-term gain.
Yep, absolutely.
Let's see.
Go get Joey Bosa, and you'll be happy, Browns fans.
There you go. Oh, that would be a nasty defensive line with Bosa and Danny Shelton.
Yeah, for sure. They got a bunch of other pass rushers they can just plug in and create a nice little rotation.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, that's a topic for another time. But for now, for my good friend Ian Wharton, I am Bill Rossetti. Thanks so much for listening as always. We'll catch you next time with our man Jeff Risden. Until then, take care, my friends. We'll see you next time right here on Gridiron Graduates. Take care, everybody.